Let's talk some rookie running backs, shall we? Last week on the Rookie Report, we talked about the wide receivers who showed up pretty big in week one. So week two, we'll look at the runners. I got a quartet of them here, and let's start with Najee Harris, who in week one, Florio, he got all the snaps. He got a ton of touches. The production wasn't particularly great, but in week two, things looked better. 81 total yards, 5 catches, had a receiving touchdown, also had a really nasty stiff arm on Jonathan Abram that made a ton of highlights. But as I went back and watched this game, the Steelers' offense, I guess to be kind, is kind of boring. It's a lot of short throws. Every now and then Ben maybe tosses one deep, but there's just not a lot that gets you fired up. Should we be worried about maybe this offense kind of putting a lid on Harris's overall production?
I'm not worried yet because I don't think we've seen the big Najee Harris, like the ceiling yet for Harris. I think last week was the floor, obviously, and I think this week was more like, I wouldn't say an average week, but closer to that, I think, than the ceiling. Like, he has played at least 95% of the snaps in both games, has at least 15 touches in both. We know he is going to be heavily used in the passing game. I do think the short passes kind of hurts him because it keeps everything kind of bunched up at the line of scrimmage. You need some shots downfield to open things up near the line of scrimmage, but the offense and the offensive line have been the concern for Najee since, the draft, but I'm not too worried yet. I think the usage is remarkable, and it's what we wanted to see so far. So if I have Harris, I'm not feeling great, but I'm also not too worried just yet.
I keep saying all of the metrics are there. Everything we want from our running backs are there. We just haven't seen the big production yet, but it's getting incrementally better. Week one, not great. Week two, definitely a little bit more productive. I would like to see Big Ben stretch the field a little bit more, take some of those shots downfield to Chase Claypool, and maybe back off the defense. But as long as they're still going to load up Harris with 15, 20, 25 touches per game, I think the opportunity is going to be there. One thing to keep an eye on, Deontay Johnson at the very end of that game suffered an injury, so that's something to sort of monitor as the week goes along about what happens with him and what that means for the rest of the Steeler offense. But Najee, I think, is going to be okay long term. It was not a good day for the Jets, but Michael Carter was okay. He got you 88 total yards, had a pair of catches. I think we saw de-emphasized Tevin Coleman in the offense in week two. We did see some Ty Johnson, but Michael Carter seems to be taking the lead. Would you flex him next week against the Denver Broncos?
I think he's going to be in that discussion. It would depend on options, but I definitely think Michael Carter is a name that if he is still out there on the waiver wire, he needs to be grabbed this week because, like you said, Tevin Coleman, he played less than 10% of the snaps. He kind of looks cast aside. Ty Johnson and Carter each played 46% of the snaps. Johnson had 12 carries. Carter had 11. But what I love, Marcus, is all 3 running back targets went to Michael Carter. They were no one else utilized in the passing game. Carter is the most explosive option of those 3. Coleman is what he is at this point, and Ty Johnson has been a journeyman throughout his career. So I think Michael Carter is going to have every opportunity as the year goes on to carve out a larger and larger workload. So next week, he's not a slam dunk flex option, I don't think, but he's definitely in that discussion, and moving forward, his upside is a lot higher than that.
I did think, and I'm not the only one, who felt like Carter was going to maybe take a couple of weeks to really get up to speed, that we'd see Tevin Coleman early and eventually he would sort of be pushed to the background. Maybe that's happening sooner rather than later. The only real concern for me, and yesterday sort of highlighted it, is that there will be weeks when the Jets just have issues moving the football because of the defense, because of the growing pains of such a young team. We saw that yesterday, and there will probably be more games like that in this season. So that's one thing to sort of keep in mind. And so you're right. Whoever you have on your bench or in your lineup will probably impact how much you like Michael Carter this week. But it at least shows that they are willing to sort of give him more responsibility, and that's kind of what we want, especially for a young player. It's going to be a North Carolina reunion, a Tar Heel running back reunion this week. The other guy that was in that backfield last year, Javonte Williams, now with the Denver Broncos, had his best pro game. I know there's only been 2 of them so far for him, but this one was his best game. 74 total yards. He did have a reception. Obviously, he is still sharing time with Melvin Gordon in that backfield, but he outproduced Gordon on Sunday against the Jaguars. Are you comfortable saying he's a weekly flex option at this point?
Yeah, I am. I think that you do have to worry about Melvin Gordon right now. Like in week 1, they each played 50% of the snaps, and Williams had one more touch than Gordon. This past week, it was 42% of the snaps for Williams, 58 for Gordon, with one more touch going Gordon's way. So they're really splitting it down the middle in this backfield right now. But Williams is the more explosive option, in my opinion. I know Gordon had that one really long run in week 1 against the who did they play in week 1?
I'm
sorry. The Giants. Yep. I was going to say the Jets, yeah. But then this past week, it was Williams who was more productive. I think they're both flex options until one really runs away with the job, but I don't see Williams being phased out of this offense after they traded up to get him in the second round. Whereas Melvin Gordon, I think we could see, he's a free agent after this year. We could see his workload dialed back as the year goes on. So I think Williams is a flex option for now, but his upside is a lot higher if he can just carve out a larger role.
That's sort of my thought too, is that as the year goes along, we're going to start to see the pendulum swing more toward Javonte Williams getting opportunities in this backfield. I think both guys are good, and they're both going to be given the football, but I think the upside is more on the side of Williams. So that was why I tried to draft him in a lot of places. It got a lot harder as we got closer to the start of the season, because I think a lot of people believe that this is going to be his backfield before too long there in Denver. All right, so those were the 3 good ones. We got to get to the bad, the confusing, the I don't know what's happening here situation, and that's Trey Sermon with the San Francisco 49ers. Healthy scratch in week 1, which nobody saw coming. Then heading into week 2, we keep hearing reports. The offensive coordinator says he's practicing hard. We're excited for him to get his opportunity, especially after the injury to Raheem Mostert. Everyone expected that Trey Sermon was going to be on the field, maybe playing behind Eli Mitchell. He was active. He was not the guy behind Eli Mitchell. He ended up getting 1 snap, had 1 carry, took a really nasty fall and suffered a head injury. But, Mike, this didn't even happen until the 4th quarter. I mean, up until then, it was Elijah Mitchell and JaMycal Hasty getting all the work. We didn't see Trey Sermon until both those guys at some point had left with injuries. This is 2 weeks where we have barely seen Trey Sermon on the field. I would imagine a lot of folks are starting to panic. What should they do about this right now?
I think Sermon is very close to, like, you could just drop him at this point. Like, there's no way you could even consider getting this guy in your starting lineup. For me, he is behind. Like, I would drop him for Michael Carter or any of these rookie running backs that they are still out there that we have just spoken about. I mean, JaMycal Hasty had 5 carries, and even more impressive than that, Marcus, 5 targets and 4 catches. I thought JaMycal Hasty was playing over Sermon in week 1 for special teams purposes. That was clearly not the case. He remains ahead of Sermon. Elijah Mitchell is clearly ahead of him. And then we have to worry about Trenton Cannon getting utilized too as well. Sermon, if you want to hold on to him, if you think better days are coming and he's going to get more usage because there's no Mostert this whole season, that's the only thing I think you have to hold on to him right now. There's nothing that we've seen for how they use him, anything Kyle Shanahan has said about him, or anything that makes me even remotely feel good about this guy going forward.
It is really a messy situation back there. And then, of course, it appears that Sermon's going to be going through concussion protocol this week, so that's something to sort of keep an eye on. If you're in a dynasty league, hold on to him, because I think there is a path for him. But right now, if you're in a redraft league, and especially if you've got maybe a short bench, it's probably not worth waiting on him, because it just doesn't look like he's going to get that kind of workload anytime soon. Not what any of us anticipated, but at least through the first 2 weeks of the season, it appears. Look, Shanahanigans is what I got on the board behind me. Shanahanigans have raised their head in Santa Clara through the first 2 weeks of the season.